Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
From Detroit's largest art object, the Fisher Building, this is your Daily Detroit for October 8th, 2019. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. We've got a slew of stories to catch up on around town, so let's just jump right into it. It's day 22 of the United Auto Workers strike against GM, with around 48,000 people on the picket lines, including 17,000 right here in Michigan alone. The UAW said Sunday that GM rebuffed its proposal and in turn offered a proposal the union had previously rejected. There's also a report from WXYZ that GM has backed off on its proposals to build a new electric pickup truck at the Detroit Hamtramck plant and build a new battery plant near Lordstown, Ohio, where it's shutting down a vehicle assembly plant. If true, that could mean that both plants would be shuttered.
And the latest is that all three Detroit automakers are apparently using the National Joint Training Centers as bargaining chips with the UAW. The Detroit News reports that the UAW training centers funded by both GM and Fiat Chrysler could be restructured with higher financial controls by the automakers and lower structural costs. The Freep reports that GM may even want to close its joint training center on the riverfront and sell the building and its property to a private owner. Those training centers have figured large in the ongoing federal investigation into embezzlement at the UAW.
The stalemate idling 55 facilities is likely to drag on as both sides have major issues they can't seem to give ground on. You know, there's a lot on this table, Sven. Electric vehicles are coming, and they're going to need far fewer components and fewer workers to put those together.
And plus, there's huge costs that, all automakers are facing to develop electric vehicle technology, to build new vehicle platforms, retool plants and everything. Enormous costs, especially, and then also, factoring in autonomous vehicles, which are a little bit
those
more,
are farther down the
a little
road,
bit more far-fetched, but they're coming and everybody's, working on them and nobody wants to be late to that.
So do you think anybody has a good handle on the when? Like, when are these electric and then autonomous vehicles coming, or is it still a guessing game?
Well, electric vehicles are very much here already. They're still a very small part of the overall market in the United States, although they're larger overseas, like in European countries and in China and stuff. But that technology will certainly advance. I think we're starting to see some advances in like battery driving range and things like that. Autonomous vehicles is a little bit more of a crapshoot. I think there's been a lot of overly optimistic talk from automakers, but I think most experts agree that it's a ways out yet before autonomous vehicles is ready for prime time.
In the meantime, for GM, one of the few areas they can actually control costs in a global integrated supply chain is labor. Labor, according to the Center for Automotive Research, runs $63 an hour at GM, $61 an hour at Ford, $55 an hour at FCA, and non-unionized labor costs nationally range at about $50 an hour. And so in the highly competitive auto industry, this is pushing GM to use more offshore factories and temporary workers than its rivals.
Yeah, and to be clear, those figures include healthcare benefits, which drive up those costs.
Yeah, this isn't workers taking home $61 an hour.
No, and in fact, healthcare is one of the issues, that the two sides are arguing over.
On the union side, the UAW made major concessions during the last contract and feel they need to get at least some of those back. The UAW pays a very low percentage of their healthcare costs compared to other American workers, and we're talking single-digit percentages here. And that's another area where GM would probably like to get some savings, and the UAW wants more of those temporary workers to become permanent. To make this even more complicated than it already is, lurking in the shadows is an active federal investigation of union officials.
And plus, there's the whole ongoing economic impact of the strike, which is now in its fourth week. The Detroit News reports that, again, 17,000 UAW workers in Michigan are involved in the strike against GM, and that as of the end of September, there were 3,500 unemployment claims from people who were laid off from companies that supplied parts to GM, auto suppliers, in other words. Meanwhile, UAW workers who are on strike are now having to make do on just $250 a week in take-home pay, which is, try living on $250 a week. I can't imagine that's easy. I will point out here that General Motors reported $2.4 billion in profit just in the second quarter alone, right? They're going to release their third quarter results at the end of this month, but they've already said that their third quarter deliveries were up 6.3%. So it sounds like things were good, but we'll see in the numbers, of course. I heard somewhere recently a comparison between starting auto workers in the assembly plants makes somewhere close to $16 to $17 an hour, which somebody pointed out is pretty much the equivalent of what you'd get paid in an Amazon fulfillment warehouse.
Because the floor there now is $15 an hour plus.
Yeah, so It just sort of brings up like this troubling trend, though, of like jobs of the future. That's not a lot of money. $15, $16, $17 an hour is not a lot of money. Those jobs are stressful. They're repetitive. They need their health care because, especially in the auto plants, because it can be pretty difficult work.
It wears you down. As somebody who has a lot of family that have been in the UAW, it wears you way down.
Yeah, with a lot of the overhead work and the repetitive, motions and everything. And we're in this future where it's like, jobs are becoming more and more like repetitive and stressful. The pressure's on and everything. And, all because, they're working for these publicly traded companies that answer to shareholders and to Wall Street and have to keep their earnings up. They're under pressure quarter to quarter to deliver.
You may have heard stories about lead in the water up in Flint. It made national news. But recent testing has revealed that lead has exceeded acceptable levels closer to home. The Oakland County suburbs of Birmingham and White Lake were found to have select samples with lead levels above 15 parts per billion. County officials say they're working to find the source of the problem, and the Oakland County Health Division is working to get these cities in compliance. Usually, lead gets into drinking water through the corrosion of materials containing lead in the water distribution system and plumbing. There are water filtration kits available, and it's important to note that this doesn't affect all homes. We'll have some links to resources in the show notes.
Detroit basketball!
The Detroit Pistons have moved into their new practice facility and corporate headquarters in the new center. The team marked the opening of its new $90 million four-story facility at Amsterdam and 2nd Avenue on Monday. It's the largest practice facility in the NBA. The 185,000 square foot mixed-use facility also serves as the team's headquarters. Other features include a broadcast studio and interview rooms, 3 hydro pools and cryogenic treatment systems. Love me some cryogenic treatment, Jer. And the franchise's 3 NBA championship trophies, which are on prominent display. For the public, there will be a Plum Market grocery outlet and Blink fitness workout facility, both of which are expected to be open by the end of the year. It's also connected by an enclosed glass walkway to the new $37 million William Clay Ford Center for Athletic Medicine. Henry Ford is the Pistons' official sports medicine sponsor and provider. The new facility will also allow for youth basketball clinics, health and fitness programming, and Pistons Academy basketball programs. Here's Pistons owner Tom Gores speaking about the children.
This is a place for kids to be. We want to open this up for kids. And if there's any kid listening, I just want to remind you, when you come here, have fun. You have a good time. But then when you go home, I want you to work hard for your future and go live your dream. And don't let anybody else tell you that your dream's not possible. And I remind you, as a little boy from Flint, crazy that I'm up here.
And don't forget to eat your peas and carrots and other vegetables too, kids. Look, I think this is great news. In all seriousness, I think professional basketball belongs back here in Detroit. Which is not to say that there aren't fans and players out in, Auburn Hills and the distant suburbs out there. Of course there were.
But when I drive through the city and I see people playing in the streets or playing in the yards, it's basketball, man.
Yeah, this has a potential to really connect, I think, with kids in the city here in Detroit and hope, provide them with another positive example, positive role models, and show them, like a positive path. I think it's going to be really key for the Pistons to sort of, make outreach and expand their youth programming options to kids in the city. And I hope they do that, frankly.
And it's good for the community. And it's good for the team, right? Those are future fans that are going to be more rabid about what you're doing. And I got to say this, though, because we mentioned this before. There's a plum market coming. You know what that might mean?
What's that?
A Moet champagne vending machine within walking distance of this very studio.
Oh my God, will wonders never cease?
I know, this is Detroit for you. And the one thing that is interesting, though, is that the Fisher Building will not be the golden tower of the Fisher Building. It will be the blue and red tower in celebration, I think, through the end of the month. Another one of the food stalls inside the Fort Street Galley in downtown Detroit says it plans to close up shop. Lucky's Noble Barbecue had always planned its time in the food hall as an incubation period. The Detroit News reports that its last day in business at Fort Street Galley will be Sunday, October 13th. Lucky's is a concept from owners Brian Ricord and Jimmy Schmidt, the James Beard award-winning chef best known as the former owner of the Rattlesnake Club. The eatery serves only high-quality beef and seafood, no pork, with gluten, wheat, and allergen-free ingredients. And I just got to add here, that allergen-free thing, it's more and more of a thing nowadays. It's the latest of the Galley's 4 original eateries to defect from the food hall, leaving the Filipino food stall Isla as the lone holdout from the original 4. Lucky's will continue to operate as a catering and delivery business while it looks for a new location for a standalone restaurant. Fort Street Galley's taken it on the chin a little bit lately.
I guess so. I confess I have not been there. You?
I've stepped in, but it's kind of hard to go there if you're not working in the immediate downtown. It's just kind of, you've got to go off the beaten path. I just know that they've had a lot of challenges over there.
According to a new report, Detroit is one of the least green cities in America. That's right. Despite our urban farms and large open spaces, we're not actually all that environmentally friendly with our actions. This, according to Wallet Hub. Detroit ranks 93rd out of 100 metropolitan regions. We rank poorly for a number of commuters who drive alone, our air quality, greenhouse gas emissions per person, lack of farmers markets, and median air quality. According to Wallet Hub, the most green city is San Francisco, California, followed by the California cities of San Diego and Irvine.
I'm just going to say this here, and longtime listeners will probably know exactly what I'm about to say, but transit is a good thing.
What's that mean?
Well,
transit. What's transit? Well, look, I took my wife and I took our kids out to an apple orchard out in Macomb County last weekend, and we were driving up Van Dyke to get there, and I was just, and this is not to pick on Macomb County, or anything, because I think there are lots of places where you see the same thing, but I was just struck by Van Dyke is just like a monument to the automobile. It is lined with, you have the GM Tech Center, you have lots of car factories out there, you have massive sprawling car dealerships, and then you've got strip malls that are
as far as the eye could see,
that are set back from the road by these enormous surface parking lots, right? I mean, it is a place, it's built entirely around the car. I mean, so in an environment like that, and again, you can see that kind of landscape all over this region. It's hardly surprising.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed here, I picked out that they used farmers markets as some sort of indicator.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I think that's an interesting choice, but I'd also note, like having traveled quite a bit, that farmer markets here are very pop-up. It's not like in some areas where there are permanent farmers markets open 5 or 7 days a week. Here, it's like Easter Market, open for a couple of days. You've got Royal Oak and you've got Birmingham. And I think there's one in Grosse Pointe and there's a couple pop-ups, but you have to know when they are. They're only for a few hours. It's not like there's a culture here of like the permanent farmers market. A Michigan actor will play controversial former FBI head James Comey in a new TV miniseries. The CBS production is based on Comey's New York Times best-selling book, A Higher Loyalty, Truth, Lies, and Leadership. Filming will begin in November. The exact home, meaning which channel it's going to be on for the series, has not been decided. Although Daniels has a variety of roles on and off screen to his credit, he just completed an epic 52-week run of To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway without missing a single performance. Daniels is also a founder of the Purple Rose Theater Company out in Chelsea, Michigan.
Orange barrels are coming to I-275 early next year as part of a resurfacing and bridge project. The $50 million project will run through fall and impact Northville, Livonia, Plymouth, and Canton. Bridge improvements will happen between 6 Mile and Ford Road, and the shoulders will also be widened. If you're interested in knowing more in person, MDOT is holding a public meeting next Tuesday, October 15th, at 4 p.m. at Summit on the Park in Canton.
In other late-breaking and more immediate traffic news, 2 busy ramps at the I-96 M39 interchange are going to be closed for 3 weeks for emergency repairs starting this Friday night at 8 p.m. Specifically, the westbound I-96 ramps to northbound and southbound M39 Southfield Freeway will be closed, as well as the northbound and southbound M39 ramps to eastbound I-96. Turns out, MDOT says there are major holes in the bridge that need to be fixed before winter.
Yikes.
This is just going to keep coming, isn't it?
Before we let you go, wanted to let you know that this month, Canine To Five in Detroit and Ferndale will be collecting new and gently used bras along with feminine hygiene products for I Support the Girls Detroit. The organization helps women experiencing homelessness, so if you can, lend them, well, give them one of your brassieres.
And that'll do it for today's show. Thanks for listening, and know that this podcast is people-powered media. Your support matters, and so become a member at dailydetroit.com/join.
That's right. People have the power. There is no big corporate owner, Amazon, General Motors, anybody like that. It's just Jer
no GE, no NBC, no. It's Jer and Sven on the bus to work, and Cheyenne and Randy on the bus to work.
Sharing stories that matter about this city and region that we love.
With that, I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Sven Gustafson. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.